poor single dad let a strange girl stay for one night unaware she was a millionaire's daughter. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a cold, rainy evening when Mark, a single dad, sat at his small kitchen table, eating a meager dinner with his daughter. He was barely making ends meet, struggling to pay bills and provide for his little girl. The apartment they lived in was far from ideal, but it was home, and for Mark, that was enough. He had never let his daughter feel the weight of their situation. She was his priority. And no matter how hard things got, he always tried to keep a smile on her face. But on this particular evening, something unexpected was about to happen. As Mark cleaned up the dishes, there was a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, a girl stood there, drenched from the rain. She looked about his daughter's age, maybe a little older, but her clothes were torn, and she had that lost look in her eyes. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, shivering. "I've been walking around for hours, and I don't have anywhere to go. Could I please stay for just one night?" Mark hesitated. He was used to being careful, especially when it came to strangers. But there was something in her voice that made him hesitate even more. She was desperate, scared, and she reminded him a bit of himself when he first started out. Against his better judgment, Mark stepped aside. "All right, come in. You can stay here for the night," he said. The girl gave a faint smile and stepped inside. Her name was Lily, she explained. But she was in no mood to talk. She just needed warmth and safety for a while. Mark set her up with some blankets on the couch, offered her some food, and told her to make herself comfortable. As he went to his daughter's room to tuck her in, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of guilt. He knew he didn't have much to offer, but he couldn't turn a person away, especially someone so vulnerable. The night passed quietly. Mark woke up early the next morning, getting ready for work. He tried to be as quiet as possible, not wanting to wake Lily. But when he went to the kitchen to make coffee, he found her sitting at the table, looking out the window. She had a distant look on her face, almost as if she was deep in thought. "I don't mean to be rude," Mark said, breaking the silence, "but I'm curious what happened to you. You seem like you've been through a lot." Lily's expression softened. "It's not important," she said quietly, shaking her head. "I just needed a place to stay for the night." But there was something in her eyes that told Mark there was more to the story. Still, he didn't press her further. He knew better than to ask too many questions to a stranger who wasn't ready to share. As they sat there in silence, sipping their coffee, Mark's phone buzzed with a reminder about an important meeting he had later that morning. He had to leave soon. "I have to go to work," Mark said, standing up. "But thank you for being understanding. You're free to stay as long as you need." He smiled at her before grabbing his things and heading out the door. What Mark didn't know, however, was that Lily was far from ordinary, and as the morning sun began to rise, Lily was already making plans of her own. She wasn't the girl she appeared to be. She wasn't just someone looking for a place to sleep for the night. She was the daughter of a billionaire, someone who could change Mark's life in ways he never imagined. And yet, she had chosen to stay with him, a man who had nothing to offer except kindness. Little did Mark know, this seemingly random act of kindness would turn his world upside down. The next day, Mark came home from work to find Lily still there, sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine he had left out. She seemed calm, almost serene now, as though the storm that had been swirling around her the night before had passed. Mark couldn't help but notice how different she looked compared to when she first arrived. She had showered, changed into some of his daughter's old clothes, and the tattered, wet clothes she had been wearing last night were gone. The moment Mark stepped through the door, she looked up, offering him a soft smile. "Hey, you're back early," she said. "How was your day?" Mark gave a tired but grateful smile. "Busy as usual," he replied, kicking off his shoes and heading towards the kitchen to prepare something to eat. "You hungry?" Lily shook her head. "I'm good, thank you." There was an awkward silence between them for a moment. Mark wasn't sure how to handle the situation. He had done what any decent person would do, helped a stranger in need, but now he couldn't help but wonder if he was doing the right thing by letting her stay. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Who was she really? Why had she come to him of all people? And most importantly, why had she chosen to stay? He had nothing to offer her. He was barely scraping by. As he busied himself in the kitchen, the sound of Lily's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mark," she said, her tone hesitant. "I need to tell you something. It's important." He paused, turning to face her. The air seemed to grow heavy, with the weight of whatever she was about to say. "What is it?" Mark asked, his heart suddenly racing. Lily put down the magazine and stood up, walking toward him. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," she began, her voice quiet. "About not knowing who I really am." She hesitated again, her gaze flickering to the floor. "Well, there's a reason for that. I'm not who I said I was." Mark frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Lily took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eye. "My real name is Lily Carter. I'm the daughter of Grant Carter, CEO of Carter Enterprises." Mark's mouth went dry, his mind struggling to process the words she had just spoken. Carter Enterprises was one of the most successful companies in the city. It was a household name. He had heard of it countless times. But the daughter of Grant Carter? How could that be possible? Mark was speechless for a moment, his mind racing. You're serious?" he finally managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Lily nodded slowly. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I just didn't want to be treated differently. I didn't want you to help me out of pity." Mark stood frozen, trying to wrap his head around what she had just revealed. It was hard to believe, but at the same time, the pieces seemed to fall into place. Her demeanor, her calmness, everything about her now seemed to make sense. She wasn't some random girl off the street. She was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country, and she had come to him for help. Someone who had nothing to offer but kindness. It was almost too much to comprehend. Mark swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. "Why did you come to me? Why did you choose to stay with me?" Lily looked away, as if unsure how to explain. "I don't know," she said after a long pause. I guess I've been running away from everything. From my family, from the life that was chosen for me. I wanted to be normal, even if just for a little while. When I showed up at your door last night, I didn't expect anything. I just wanted someone who didn't care about who I was or what my last name was." Mark's heart softened at her words. He couldn't imagine what it must have been like to live in the shadow of such an immense legacy. He could understand why she would want to escape from it all. But at the same time, he felt a mix of emotions, shock, disbelief, and maybe even a little anger. "But why me?" Mark asked, still struggling to understand. "I have nothing to offer you." Lily stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with sincerity. "You have kindness. You have a heart. That's more than enough for me," she said, her voice full of emotion. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He had never thought of himself as someone special. He was just trying to survive, trying to take care of his daughter. But here was this girl, this incredibly wealthy girl, telling him that it was his kindness that had drawn her to him. It was a humbling moment. As the silence lingered between them, Mark realized that his life, as hard as it was, had been about one thing: love. His love for his daughter, his love for the simple things in life. And now, somehow, it had made a difference to someone else: Lily. She wasn't just some random stranger anymore. She was a person who needed love and understanding just like anyone else. Mark didn't know where this would lead or what the future held, but one thing was certain: this moment would change both of their lives forever. Oh. The next few days passed in a blur, as Mark tried to process the revelation that Lily, the girl he had taken in, was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country. He couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. He had helped her when she was at her lowest, and now, here she was, offering him nothing but gratitude and kindness in return. It felt surreal. Lily, on the other hand, seemed to settle into the apartment more comfortably with each passing day. She didn't flaunt her wealth, didn't ask for anything extravagant, and she never mentioned her father again. She seemed genuinely content to just be Lily. Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and respect for her. For someone so wealthy, she didn't have an ounce of entitlement in her. It was as if she genuinely just wanted to experience life like anyone else, free from the expectations and pressures of her family's name. One evening, as Mark sat at the kitchen table, working on his bills, Lily approached him with an idea that had been on her mind for a while. "Mark," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said when I first got here, about having nothing to offer. You were wrong." Mark looked up from the pile of bills, surprised by her sudden statement. "What do you mean?" he asked, confused. Lily took a deep breath and smiled, her eyes reflecting a sincerity Mark hadn't seen in anyone in a long time. "You have more than you think," she said, walking over to sit across from him. "You've given me something that no one else ever has. You've given me your time, your kindness, your patience. That's worth more than anything money can buy." Mark didn't know how to respond. He had never thought of himself as having anything to offer other than what he could provide in terms of basic needs. But hearing Lily speak so honestly, so openly, made him realize something. It wasn't about money or status. It was about human connection, the simple, often overlooked things that made life meaningful. But even with that realization, Mark still wasn't sure how to move forward. He felt like he was in uncharted territory. Lily had changed his perspective on life, but he still had his daughter to take care of, his own bills to pay, and his own struggles to contend with. It was hard to imagine how Lily, with her wealth and her connection to one of the richest men in the world, could be a part of his life without things getting complicated. As if sensing his unease, Lily spoke up again. "Mark, I want to help. I don't want to just be someone who stays here and feels like a burden. I want to make a difference, not just in your life, but in the world. I have the resources to do something good." Mark felt a mix of emotions as he listened to her. He didn't know if he was ready for her to step into his world in such a way. He wasn't sure how to balance his life with hers, especially with all the uncertainties he was dealing with. "I appreciate that, Lily," Mark said quietly. "But I don't know if I'm ready to accept that kind of help. I don't want to take anything from you. You've already given me more than I ever expected." Lily's expression softened, and she reached out, placing her hand over his. "I'm not offering you money, Mark," she said gently. "I'm offering you a partnership. We can help each other. I can help you with your business ideas, help you find new opportunities. Let's work together. You have a vision, and I believe in it." Mark stared at her, taken aback by the sincerity in her voice. He had never thought of himself as someone with a business idea, someone who could have an actual vision that others could believe in. But Lily's words made him realize that maybe he had been selling himself short all along. Maybe he did have something to offer, something more than just survival. As the days went on, Lily helped Mark refine his ideas, pushing him to think bigger, to believe in himself. They spent hours talking about business plans, potential investments, and the future. Lily introduced him to a few of her contacts, people who believed in what he was doing, and before long, Mark found himself taking steps toward creating something real. With Lily's support and guidance, he started to feel like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as lost as he had thought. His daughter began to see a change in him too. He was more focused, more optimistic, and though there were still many challenges ahead, he felt like he was finally on a path that could lead to something better. But even as things started to improve, Mark couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this new life he was creating wasn't just about business or money. It was about something deeper. It was about trust, about believing in someone enough to let them into your world, even when it felt like the world was too big, too different, and too complicated to navigate. One night, after a particularly long day of brainstorming ideas and meeting new people, Mark sat back in his chair, looking over the plans they had developed. Lily sat across from him, her eyes tired but content. She had helped him see the possibilities, but there was something else that had shifted in him too. It wasn't just about the money or success, it was about the connection they had built, the bond they shared. Mark didn't know what the future held, but he knew that with Lily's support and his own determination, he could create a life for his daughter that was better than anything he had ever imagined. As the weeks passed, Mark began to see changes in his life that he had once thought impossible. Lily had become a constant presence in his world, offering advice, encouragement, and the kind of support that made him believe in himself again. Together, they worked on his business ideas, meeting with investors, strategizing, and slowly but surely, things started to take off. Mark was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. His daughter noticed the difference too. She could see the spark in his eyes that hadn't been there before, and it made her feel hopeful for the future. But as Mark's life improved, so did Lily's. She had always been the daughter of a billionaire, but now, for the first time in a long time, she was discovering a sense of purpose beyond her family's wealth. She was learning that the life she had been running from could be part of a bigger picture, one that involved helping others and making a real difference. But the deeper Lily got into Mark's world, the more complicated things became. She had her own family to contend with. Her father, Grant Carter, the powerful CEO, had never been pleased with her decisions to distance herself from the family's expectations. When Lily finally gathered the courage to reach out to him and explain her new life, she wasn't prepared for his reaction. The phone call came one evening, just as Mark was putting his daughter to bed. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something told her it was important. "Lily," her father's voice came through the line, cold and distant. "Where are you?" Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. I'm in New York, Dad," she replied softly. "I've been living with a friend here. I'm starting a new chapter." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Grant finally spoke again, his words were sharp and filled with disappointment. "A friend? Lily, what is this? You know better than to throw away everything we've built for some friend." Lily felt her chest tighten. "Dad, I don't want to live my life according to your plan anymore. I want to do something real, something that matters." There was another pause, this time longer, as if her father was trying to decide what to say next. "You've always been too emotional about these things," he said finally. "You're making a mistake, and I won't support you in this." His words stung, but Lily stood her ground. "I don't need your support, Dad," she said, her voice firm. "I've got this. I'm not doing it for you or anyone else. I'm doing it for me." The line went dead shortly after, and Lily felt a wave of emotion flood through her. She had expected this, but hearing her father's coldness still cut deeply. She couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment that would finally sever the ties between them. She had chosen a different path, one that didn't revolve around her family's wealth, and that decision had clearly disappointed him. But in that moment, Lily realized that she had made the right choice. She was building a life for herself, not one that was dictated by her father's expectations. As she sat quietly in the apartment that she now shared with Mark, she thought about everything that had led her here, the difficult decisions, the new beginnings, and the unexpected connections. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was real. Mark walked into the room, sensing the change in the air. He sat beside her, his presence warm and comforting. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I'm fine. Just had a conversation with my dad." Mark nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "You did what you had to do," he said, his voice filled with encouragement. "You're building something that's yours. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Lily smiled faintly, her heart warmed by his words. For the first time in a long time, she felt understood, not just as a daughter of a billionaire, but as a person with dreams, ambitions, and the desire to create her own path. As the days turned into weeks, Mark and Lily's bond grew even stronger. They continued to work side by side, and slowly but surely, Mark's business flourished. He found new opportunities, built lasting relationships, and started to believe that the life he had dreamed of for his daughter was within reach. Lily, too, found fulfillment in the work she was doing. She had begun to see that her wealth wasn't a curse, it was a tool she could use to help others, to build a future where she didn't have to hide behind her family's legacy. And in the midst of all the changes, there was one constant: their friendship, which had blossomed into something deeper. Neither of them had expected it to happen, but as they spent more time together, they realized that the connection they shared was undeniable. One evening, as they sat in the apartment after another long day of work, Lily turned to Mark with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone like you. Someone who just gets it. Someone who sees me for who I really am, not just my last name." Mark looked at her, his heart swelling with a mix of emotions. "I see you, Lily," he said gently. "I see you for who you are, and I'm glad I got to know you." There was a pause, a quiet understanding between them. It was in that moment that both of them realized they had found something in each other that they had never expected: love, not defined by wealth or status, but by something far more meaningful: connection, trust, and the possibility of a future built together. Oh, as the weeks went by, Mark and Lily continued to grow closer, their bond deepening in ways neither of them had expected. What started as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something much more meaningful, something neither of them could have anticipated. Mark's business was thriving, thanks to the support and guidance Lily had provided. She had helped him navigate the world of investors, pushing him to think bigger, to aim higher, and to believe in his own potential. Together, they had built something real, something that Mark could be proud of. He could see a future for his daughter, one that was secure and full of possibilities, and it was all thanks to the chance meeting with Lily, a girl who had come into his life when he least expected it. But even as things were going well, Mark couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was missing. Despite all the success they had achieved together, there was still an underlying tension between them, a tension that neither of them had fully addressed. He had always been cautious, especially when it came to relationships. He had been burned before, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to open himself up again. Lily, too, had her own fears. Despite the progress they had made, she still struggled with the remnants of her past, the pressure from her family, and the expectations that came with being the daughter of a billionaire. One evening, after a long day of meetings, they sat together in the apartment, enjoying a quiet dinner. The soft hum of the city could be heard through the window, and the warm glow of the lights made the room feel cozy and intimate. As they ate, there was a moment of silence between them, a tension that neither of them had spoken about but both could feel. Finally, Lily set down her fork and looked at Mark. "We need to talk," she said softly. Mark raised an eyebrow, setting his own fork down. "About what?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity but also a hint of caution. Lily took a deep breath, her eyes searching his face as if looking for something, an answer, perhaps, or reassurance. "About us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure how to respond. He had spent so much time focused on his daughter, on the business, on everything else, that he hadn't given much thought to what was happening between him and Lily. But now, as she sat across from him, her gaze steady and sincere, he realized that he couldn't ignore it any longer. "What about us?" he asked, his voice soft, his mind racing. Lily looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "I don't know what this is, Mark," she said quietly. "I don't know what to call it, but I feel something, and I don't want to keep pretending that I don't." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. He had been feeling the same way, but he had been too afraid to admit it, too afraid to risk everything they had built, to risk the friendship, the partnership, the life they had started to create together. "I feel it too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I don't know if I'm ready for this. I'm scared, Lily. I'm scared of ruining what we have." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "But I don't want to run from this. I don't want to hide from what's right in front of us." There was a long pause, the silence heavy with the weight of their words. Mark's mind raced as he tried to process everything. He had never imagined that his life would turn out like this. He had never imagined that he would be sitting here, in this moment, with this woman, contemplating the possibility of something more. But as he looked into Lily's eyes, he realized that he didn't have to have all the answers right now. What mattered was that they were both here, together, and that they were willing to face whatever came next. "I don't know what the future holds," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I don't want to lose what we have." Lily reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "We won't lose it," she said softly. "We'll face it together, whatever it is." And in that moment, Mark felt a sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. With Lily by his side, he believed that anything was possible. The next few months passed quickly, filled with new opportunities, new challenges, and, for the first time in a long time, a sense of hope for the future. Mark's business continued to grow, and Lily's presence in his life only made everything better. They weren't just partners in business anymore, they were partners in life. Mark had come to realize that it wasn't about the money, the success, or the accolades. It was about the people you shared your life with, the ones who believed in you, and the ones who made you believe in yourself. And as he looked at Lily, he knew that he had found something truly special. She had come into his life when he needed her most, and together, they had created a future that was brighter than either of them had ever imagined. Oh? The weeks turned into months, and Mark and Lily continued to grow stronger together. Mark had learned to trust her not only with his business, but with his heart as well. Their partnership had become a perfect balance of work and personal connection, something Mark never thought he would experience again. The success of his business was undeniable, and Lily's guidance had been a major part of it. But there was something else that had changed in him. His outlook on life had shifted. He had once been so consumed with just surviving that he had forgotten what it meant to truly live, to find joy in the little things. But with Lily by his side, he was starting to enjoy the simple moments again. They would laugh over dinner, take long walks in the park, and share stories of their past. It felt normal, real, and that was something Mark hadn't realized he was missing. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mark sat in his office, looking over the latest numbers for the business. The numbers were good, better than he had ever hoped for, but his mind wasn't fully focused. He kept thinking about the future, about what was next. Lily had been an incredible support, and now, Mark was beginning to think that maybe it was time to take things to the next level. But there was still one question hanging over him. Was he ready for it? He had never imagined his life would take such an unexpected turn. A year ago, he had been just trying to make ends meet, and now he had a thriving business, a relationship with Lily, and a sense of hope for the future. It felt like a dream, one he wasn't sure he was ready to wake up from. As if on cue, Lily walked into the office, her presence always bringing a sense of calm to his chaotic thoughts. She smiled as she saw him lost in thought, and without a word, she walked over to his desk, sat down beside him, and placed her hand on his. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked softly, her voice full of warmth and understanding. Mark looked up at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. He had been thinking about their future, about how everything had changed so quickly. The last year had been a whirlwind of growth, both personal and professional, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something even bigger. "I'm just thinking," Mark said, his voice hesitant. "We've come so far, but I keep wondering what's next. Where do we go from here?" Lily smiled, a knowing smile that made Mark feel like she understood exactly what he was feeling. "What do you want to do next?" she asked, her voice steady. Mark paused for a moment, considering her question. He had spent so much time focusing on survival and success that he hadn't really thought about what he wanted for himself, for them. He had always believed that success was the ultimate goal, but now, with Lily by his side, he realized that there was something more. Mark started, his voice growing more certain. "I want to build a future with you, Lily. Not just in business, but in life. I want to make sure that we're doing something that matters, something that means something to us and to others." Lily's smile widened, and she squeezed his hand. "That's exactly what we're doing," she said softly. "We've built something real here, Mark, and we'll keep building, together." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, hands entwined, their hearts in sync, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The future no longer seemed uncertain, no longer something to fear. It was something they could shape together. And that thought filled Mark with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. As they sat there, lost in the moment, Mark felt a warmth spread through him. This wasn't just a partnership anymore, it was something deeper. He realized that what they had built together was a foundation, not just for a business, but for a life. And that was more than he could have ever dreamed of. A few weeks later, after much thought, Mark took the next step in both his personal and professional life. He invited Lily to a small gathering with close friends and family to celebrate their achievements. It wasn't just about the business. It was about the bond they had created, the trust they had built, and the love that had blossomed between them. At the gathering, Mark stood up to make a toast, his heart full of gratitude. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice steady and clear. "To the people who believe in us, to the future we're building together, and to the love that makes everything possible." Lily's eyes met his, and in that moment, Mark knew that this was just the beginning of something incredible. The road ahead wasn't always going to be easy, but they had each other, and that made all the difference. As they raised their glasses to the future, Mark felt a sense of hope like never before. This was just the start of their story, and with Lily by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. As the months passed, Mark and Lily continued to build on the foundation they had created together. The business was flourishing, but more importantly, they were growing as a couple, as partners in both work and life. They had faced challenges together, made decisions together, and learned from each other. Mark's confidence had grown, not just in his professional life but in his personal life as well. He had never thought that he would find someone who understood him so completely, someone who could see him for who he really was. But Lily had done just that. And every day he spent with her only reinforced how much he had come to rely on her. Lily, too, had changed. Her relationship with her family had become more complicated as her father, Grant Carter, continued to express his disappointment with her decisions. But Lily was no longer the same person who had run away from her family's expectations. She had learned to stand on her own, to find her own way, and she had never felt more at peace with herself. One day, as they sat in the park, taking a break from their busy lives, Mark turned to Lily with a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about where we are right now, and how much has changed. A year ago, I never would have imagined that I would be sitting here, with you, talking about the future." Lily smiled, her eyes softening as she looked at him. "Neither did I," she replied, her voice full of warmth. "But I'm glad we are. I'm glad we found each other, Mark." Mark's heart swelled at her words. He had always believed that love was something that happened in movies, something that was too perfect to be real. But with Lily, everything felt genuine, raw, and real. They didn't need perfection, they just needed each other. "I'm glad we found each other too," Mark said softly, taking her hand in his. "And I'm ready for whatever comes next. With you." Lily's smile widened, and she leaned in to kiss him gently on the lips. The kiss was simple but meaningful, a silent promise between them that no matter what life threw their way, they would face it together. Later that night, as they sat in their apartment, the sound of the city humming softly in the background, Mark looked at Lily with a sense of certainty he had never felt before. "Lily," he began, his voice serious but filled with emotion. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." Lily raised an eyebrow, sensing the gravity of his words. "What is it?" she asked, her tone curious but calm. Mark took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I've been thinking about us, about everything we've built together, and I realize that there's nothing I want more than to keep building it with you. I want to spend my life with you, Lily. I want to build a future together, not just in business, but in everything." Lily's eyes softened, and she could feel her heart race at the sincerity in his voice. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it out loud filled her with a sense of joy and love she couldn't describe. "Mark," she said softly, "I've felt the same way for a long time. I want that too, more than anything." Mark smiled, his heart lifting, as he pulled out a small box from his pocket. He opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Lily Carter," he said, his voice shaking with emotion, "will you marry me?" The room seemed to pause for a moment as Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise and happiness. She had never imagined her life would come to this, a simple, honest proposal from the man she had grown to love more than she ever thought possible. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, I will." Mark slipped the ring onto her finger, and as they embraced, a sense of contentment washed over them. The future was no longer something to fear, something to wonder about. It was something they would build together, hand in hand. As the days passed, they began to make plans for their wedding, not a grand, extravagant affair, but something intimate, something that reflected who they were. They wanted their special day to be a celebration of their journey together, their love, and the life they had created. The news of their engagement spread quickly among their friends and family, and although some of Lily's relatives were skeptical about her decision to marry someone who didn't share their wealth and status, Lily knew in her heart that this was the right choice for her. She had found her partner, her equal, someone who saw her for who she truly was, not for her last name or her family's money. As the wedding day drew nearer, Mark and Lily found themselves excited, nervous, and filled with anticipation. This wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of the rest of their lives. They had already built so much together, but they knew that this was only the start of the adventure. And as they exchanged vows, surrounded by close friends and family, they both knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with love, with trust, and with the kind of bond that could never be broken. The days leading up to their wedding were filled with excitement, anticipation, and a sense of calm that Mark had never expected to feel. Everything seemed to fall into place naturally. From the venue, they had chosen a small, intimate space that felt like home to the guest list, which consisted of their closest friends and family. It wasn't a lavish affair, but it was perfect for them, a reflection of the simple yet profound life they had created together. Mark spent the final days before the wedding thinking about how far he had come. A year ago, he had been struggling just to make ends meet, his future uncertain, his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility. Now, he was on the verge of marrying the woman he loved, someone who had not only supported him, but had helped him believe in himself again. She had brought light into his life, reminding him of the things that truly mattered: love, kindness, and the pursuit of happiness. Lily, on the other hand, felt a sense of peace that she had never experienced before. Despite the tension with her family, especially her father, she knew she was making the right decision. She had finally found her place in the world, not defined by her family's legacy, but by the life she had built with Mark. She was no longer running from her past. She had embraced it and found a way to shape her future on her own terms. The morning of the wedding, Mark woke up early, as he always did. But this time, there was a sense of calm that washed over him. He sat by the window, looking out at the city that had become his home, and reflected on everything he had achieved. It wasn't just about the success of his business or the financial stability he now had. It was about the people in his life, the relationships he had built, and the love he had found with Lily. As he thought about their journey together, he realized that the most important thing he had gained wasn't wealth or success, it was a sense of purpose. He had found someone to share his life with, someone who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts, and when he opened it, he was greeted by his daughter, who had a big smile on her face. "Daddy," she said excitedly, "I can't believe it's today." Mark smiled and knelt down to hug her. "I know, sweetheart," he said softly. "I can't believe it either, but I'm ready." His daughter pulled back, her eyes wide with excitement. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Mark chuckled and shook his head. "Not at all," he said, though inside, he could feel the flutter of nerves in his chest. "I'm just happy." Meanwhile, Lily was getting ready in the small, cozy room they had rented for the day. She was calm, serene, but there was a quiet nervousness in her that she couldn't shake. As she looked at herself in the mirror, adjusting her dress and brushing her hair, she couldn't help but think of everything that had led to this moment. She thought about her family, her father, Grant Carter, who had always expected her to follow in his footsteps, to live the life he had planned for her. But she had chosen a different path, a path that had led her to Mark. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel guilty for making that choice. She had found love, not in the way she had expected, but in a way that was real, genuine, and pure. She was marrying a man who saw her for who she truly was, not for her wealth or her family's name, but for the person she had become. She smiled at her reflection, proud of the woman she had grown to be. "Today is the beginning of the rest of our lives," she whispered to herself, and with that, she stepped out of the room to join Mark. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. As Mark stood at the altar, waiting for Lily to walk down the aisle, he couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions. He had never imagined this moment would come, but now that it was here, he felt a sense of overwhelming gratitude. As Lily appeared at the back of the room, her father's legacy no longer weighing her down, her eyes locked with Mark's, she smiled, and Mark felt like his heart had just found its home. She walked towards him, slow and steady, each step bringing her closer to a new chapter in her life. When she reached him, Mark took her hand, and they exchanged vows, words spoken from the heart, words that were simple but filled with meaning. "I promise to love you, to support you, and to build a life with you," Mark said, his voice steady but full of emotion. Lily's eyes glistened with tears as she spoke. "I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your equal. I will stand by you, through all the ups and downs, and I will love you with all that I am." As the ceremony came to an end, they exchanged rings, sealing their promises to each other. The crowd cheered, but all Mark could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat, echoing in his chest. He was finally where he was meant to be, standing next to the woman he loved, ready to face whatever the future held. And as they walked down the aisle, hand in hand, Mark knew that their journey was just beginning, that together they could face anything the world had to offer. As Mark and Lily left the church, hand in hand, they felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The ceremony had been everything they had hoped for, simple, beautiful, and filled with love. It wasn't the grand affair that many people might expect from a couple in their position, but it was perfect for them. It was a reflection of their journey together, built on trust, understanding, and a deep connection that went far beyond their individual circumstances. As they stepped outside into the bright sunlight, the air was filled with laughter and excitement from their closest friends and family. The city around them seemed to disappear for a moment, and it felt like nothing else mattered. All that mattered was the two of them, starting this new chapter together. Mark looked at Lily, his heart full of gratitude, and he couldn't help but think back to all the moments that had led them here, the struggles, the challenges, the fears, and the triumphs. They had both come a long way, and now they were standing on the precipice of something even greater. "I can't believe this is real," Mark said, his voice soft as he looked at Lily. "I've dreamed of this moment for so long, but I never thought it would actually happen." Lily smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "I know exactly what you mean," she replied, her eyes full of warmth. "It's like a dream, but it's our dream, and it's only just beginning." The reception that followed was filled with laughter, joy, and love. It wasn't a huge party, but the people who mattered most were there, celebrating the new life that Mark and Lily were about to build together. As the night went on, Mark found himself looking around the room, overwhelmed with the support and love they had received. He never thought he would have a life like this, surrounded by people who believed in him and the life he was creating. For so long, he had been focused on survival, on getting by from day to day. But now, he saw that he had everything he had ever wanted, and more. As the evening came to a close, Mark and Lily stood together, their hands entwined, gazing out at the city skyline. The world was theirs, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt a sense of certainty about the future. There were still challenges ahead, of course, but they had each other. And with that, he knew they could face anything. "This is just the beginning," Mark said, his voice full of conviction. "I know we've got a lot ahead of us, but I'm ready for it. Ready for everything that comes next." Lily smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Me too," she whispered. "Together, we can do anything." In the months that followed, Mark and Lily continued to build their life together. The business they had started together grew even more successful, and with the support of their close-knit community, they were able to give back in ways they had never imagined. Mark's confidence had grown in ways he couldn't have predicted. He was no longer just surviving, he was thriving, both personally and professionally. And as for Lily, she had found the balance she had been searching for, learning that she didn't have to be defined by her family's wealth or her father's expectations. She had found her own path, one that was built on love, partnership, and the desire to make a real difference in the world. Together, Mark and Lily realized that success wasn't just about business or money. It was about the lives they touched, the love they shared, and the family they had created. They had built something real, something that would last a lifetime. They weren't just partners in business anymore, they were partners in life. And as they faced the future, they knew that there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Their love had been tested, their patience and perseverance had been pushed to the limit. But in the end, they had come out stronger. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand. The road ahead wasn't always going to be easy, but with each other by their side, Mark and Lily knew they could handle whatever came their way. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was all that mattered. And as they stepped into the future together, they knew that the best was yet to come. Discover the inspiring journey of a single dad and his unexpected encounter with a mysterious girl, leading to a life-changing romance and a journey to success in this heartwarming millionaire story. From humble beginnings to building a thriving business with the help of a millionaire's daughter, their story proves that love, trust, and second chances can change everything. This captivating millionaire story unfolds as Mark, a struggling single father, finds a surprising ally in Lily, who reveals her millionaire background and helps him navigate the path to success. Together, they overcome challenges, proving that true wealth lies not in money, but in love, trust, and the bonds we create. As their business flourishes, They learn valuable lessons about life, partnership, and what it really means to be successful. Watch as this millionaire story transforms into a beautiful tale of redemption, where the characters' dreams come true, not through material wealth, but through the strength of their connection and determination. Follow this incredible millionaire story as Mark and Lily prove that with the right person by your side, you can conquer anything life throws at you. Their journey is a testament to the power of believing in yourself, finding love where you least expect it, and creating a future that is not defined by wealth, but by the relationships that truly matter.